I tell you what, my legs are fucked up right now.
Why?
Not from from Zach's. I did Bulgarians.
Oh, yeah?
I always do them. I do them once a week.
Those will get you, man.
Every week I'm fucked up from them.
Those will definitely get you.
That's probably the exercise, that or like RDLs
Yeah.
that make me the most sore.
RDLs always get me sore. I could be using fucking 25-pound dumbbells. I'm still going to be sore.
Yeah.
Cove Surf Company. Fucking kids, man. It's ridiculous, you know? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Damn kids.
All right. Want to get into it here?
Let's do it.
Getting into it here. We'll recap the week real quick and then talk about, today we're going to talk about just this past semester, the spring semester's program, and kind of break that down and go over some of the results we got. So, Steve, this week, how was it, man?
Work-wise or like strength conditioning-wise, we're just starting to pick up with college athletes, which is fun.
Yep.
So seeing like some old faces come back that haven't seen in a while.
Yep.
Actually, I'm going to play around with, because everyone, football, soccer, and track so far. Like the guys, those are the main guys coming back. Girls too, but like swimming, soccer. But those guys, it's like, all right, what do you want to work on? Like, what do you want to get better at? You got the summer, like, what are we looking at?
Yeah.
And everyone says, get faster.
Yeah.
And so the first day I did, I'm trying to like play around with load velocity profiling,
Okay.
with sled sprints and free sprints. The second fastest athlete, he goes to a small school, he runs track, but his main sport is soccer.
Okay.
He picked up track last year. Flying 10 was like a 107 maybe. And so he was the second fastest of the four. Then we did a 70-pound sled sprint.
Okay.
And he became the slowest. He was slower than the offensive lineman. He was
Damn.
slower than the punter.
Hmm.
And yeah, and it's like, then 35-pound sled sprint, so like cut the weight in half, and he's like right there in the middle. But it's like, like you could be around and watch him lift enough, and you're like, oh, you're like twitchy, elastic, springy. Yeah. But it's like, that really shows. You put some weight on the sled, and you're slow.
Is he the smallest?
Yeah, him or the other track sprinter. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So, that's the only new thing going on strength conditioning wise. Yeah, personally, my companion here, my water bottle.
Yeah.
I dropped it and it shattered. Bro, just walking in from the parking lot, hands are full of like food, book bag, water bottle, and then like a bottle that had milk in for lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just holding on to it like it's got a handle, and I don't know, it just slipped.
Damn.
Didn't think much of it, shattered.
Moment of silence, hang on.
Man.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, that sucks.
That's why you need to get a aluminum, something that's just bounce up,
Might have to go with aluminum.
Bounce straight back into your hands.
I like the idea of glass bottle.
Yeah.
But yeah, aluminum.
Was that other one glass?
The one that broke was glass.
Shit.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a glass bottle in years, I don't think. Holy cow, man.
Yeah, so that's my life right now.
Yeah, that kind of sucks, man. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else is going on or what's going on with over on this side. Just, school's almost over. We got 3 days left next week, and then we got a long weekend, and we start summer gym the day after Memorial Day.
Yep.
So Tuesday. So getting ready for the summer. Summer will be cool. There's a lot of construction going on out here. We're getting a football field.
Yep.
Getting a football
stadium.
field. A stadium for the first time in a long time. For the first time ever.
Yeah, here.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. So just kind of preparing for the construction and everything going on with that. But we got, this senior class that's graduating. There's a lot of really good athletes in there. So, my first year here was their freshman year. So it's kind of the first full class that I've seen go from freshman to senior. So that's bittersweet in and of itself. There's actually a couple grad parties already today.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Are you going to any?
yeah, T Free and I are gonna hit up. We got two of them, but the ones that are early. So like these two are guys that are um, playing at the next level. That I mean, by I think they leave like first week of June. So it
Oh,
makes
yeah,
sense
yeah,
why
yeah,
they're.
yeah.
It's pretty early usually
Mm,
for grad parties, but they're gonna be gone playing their sports at the next level. So looking forward to grad party season, just with the good food and just celebrating those seniors. And yeah, we're gonna miss a lot of those guys and girls
yeah.
um, that are graduating. But other than that, man, just been working on this stuff, getting ready for the summer, and that's really about it, man.
Yeah.
Nothing too much. So you want to kind of get into? We talked a little bit about last week. Can't remember if it was on camera or not, but talked a little bit about our end of year testing and kind of how we got some pretty good results this year for the most part, and just gonna kind of break down or do an overview of just what the program looks like, or what it looked like this last spring semester, and just kind of, and then we'll do a quick overview of the results and everything
Hmm.
from there. So, did you want to start anywhere specific, or what are you thinking?
No, let's we can leave the results. I kind of like leave it for the end.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what were some, I guess, changes that you made
Yeah.
from this year last year? And then I assume we'll probably go through a good amount of the program.
Yeah. So like changes, like I always keep the format the same, just because we're so limited by time in our class periods. But so we'll always have like a main movement and then usually three accessories afterwards that we'll run through. But in terms of changes, this spring was the first time that and this is nothing groundbreaking, but with our main movement, we usually give them about 15 minutes to do their main movement.
Okay.
And I added in like some type of accessory movement that I want them to superset their main movement with. So like for example, on their bench press, like between your whatever this is the first week, between your 3 sets of 8 on your bench press, you're gonna do 2 sets, I think. Yeah, you're gonna do 2 sets of just like a Cossack squat variation.
Okay.
So I tried to pair it up. Like main movement's upper body, we'll do a lower body accessory that we kind of that we'll superset with. So that was new, just because I don't know, doing it for a couple years, like there was a little bit of time in between, especially with all the racks we have. So it's
Yeah.
like we rarely ever have 4 people working together, just so it goes faster. So it's like, yeah, we have some time that you can kind of add in an accessory into that just for us to get a little bit more work in.
Hmm.
So again, nothing groundbreaking, but we did add that, and I think that went well. I don't know how much that contributed to the results, but I know a lot of kids were like, yeah, I like this. Like
Okay.
this keeps us busy, and
It's good
it
flow.
yeah, it's a good flow.
And then is it always, I mean, Cossack squat, yeah, you can load it up, but is it always kind of like a more, you used accessory, but kind of even like a mobility thing
Yeah,
typically? Okay.
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and it definitely starts as that, especially for kids that have never done it. Like I always start them with first couple weeks, you're not even doing reps. So you're just gonna hold. You're literally holding like a low side lunge or a Cossack squat
Okay.
for 15 seconds on each side.
Okay.
So we'll progress it after a couple weeks out of that. But it really is until the last 6, 7, 8 weeks. It definitely is more of like a mobility exercise. But with that, for a lot of kids, like that's harder than like on I think on our squat day, I think we're doing just like high rep TRX or inverted rows.
Okay. Oh, I've heard of this through the grapevine.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
from some athletes.
yeah. So we're the TRX row or inverted row is more of a strength
Yeah.
exercise, but kids are obviously much more comfortable with that. Whereas the Cossack squat, especially if they've never done it before, it takes them a little bit.
Yeah.
That's one of those exercises. Even talking to T Free about this, like first couple weeks you do it, it's like, man, like this sucks. Like it's not necessarily hard in terms of challenging the muscle. It's just the mobility aspect of it. But if you do it each week, like you're gonna get better at it. And by the end of 4, 5, 6 weeks, like you're gonna be able to sit, super low into a Cossack squat or a side lunge position. So it was a good little challenge for most of those kids. And then I'm trying to think other things that we did that I added in. I like to in the spring on our clean day. Okay, well actually in the fall on our clean day, pretty much all of our accessories are like single arm or single leg movements.
Okay.
Okay, in the spring, because most of the kids we have in the fall we have in the spring. Now we do have some kids um, that will be in class in the fall and not in the spring, and we do have vice versa. Some kids that start in the spring.
Yep.
But for the majority of them, they were in class in the fall and also in the spring. So fall accessories on our clean day, single leg, single arm stuff. When we get into the spring, I use our accessories on our clean day as more like dynamic or like faster movements. A lot of jumps and a lot of like sub-maximal like pin press
Okay.
or pin bench, pin squat. Added those in.
Seen those videos.
Yep, we'll do. We played around a little bit with like some med ball, like explosive, like supine, like bench throws, if you will. We'll do some banded plyo push-ups. A lot of like band assisted jumps, and I played around a little bit this semester with like we did about halfway, half and half. First half we did like more like ground contact time focus where we're minimal knee bend, trying to get off the ground. It's more of like a pogo, right? Trying to get off the ground as quick as you can, and then the other half we did just go into a full squat and you're trying to get higher.
Okay.
So hindsight, looking at that, I probably next year we'll change it to, we'll do a little bit of the full squat, higher jump. But we'll probably only do that for 3 or 4 weeks. So probably start with the pogo, maybe add in a little bit for a couple weeks of the higher jump. But I think the pogo is just better in terms of, I think more athletes struggle with learning how to get off the ground quickly than they do learning how to jump super high in a couple reps. You know what I mean? So we did some of that stuff. I'm trying to think of what else we had on that Wednesday. Let me see. Seated verts, a little bit of kettlebell swing, a little bit more dynamic of a hinge movement.
And these were all, you did these things as well last year, but just now they're all kind of on one day, or you didn't do them very much last year?
So most of them we did not do last year. So like pin squat and pin bench were new this year.
Yep.
The med ball, like supine throws, were new this year. And the other ones we had done before. So like kettlebell swing, seated broad we hadn't done before. We've done seated verts. But the seated broad I liked just in terms of like being able to help them feel like what their shins are doing. You know what I mean? Like shin angle wise, like starting at the seated broad, you can lean into your toes a lot more and just kind of feel like your projection angle, if you will.
Yeah.
But so I guess looking at it, I guess it was kind of like half and half. Half of them we have done before, and the other half were new this year. But I think, we usually have some good bench and squat numbers. This year they were like better than normal, I would say. And I think something that helped with that is the pin bench and the pin squat. Just think there's and this isn't again anything unknown, but I think there's a lot of value, and I think these results demonstrate that there's a lot of value of working the opposite end of the spectrum. Like a lot of times, we're focused on just lifting super heavy and working up to heavy doubles or singles or whatever it is, which definitely value in that. But I think there's a lot of value in working sub-maximally and just trying to be as explosive and fast as we can, you know. And we really don't even have a great way of monitoring, or monitoring is not the right word, a great way of prescribing loads for those movements. What I do for your pin bench and your pin squat, you can't use any more than 50% of what your estimated, or if you know what your max is, can't use any more than 50%. And it's crazy, man. Like kids don't know how to take 50%, bro. It's like kids can squat like 225 and they got like 200 pounds on the bar. And it's like, bro, like what are we doing? I think a lot of that is like they look around, you see whatever, and you're not used to, again, it's something that, we have to get the kids used to, like, I would tell them every week, it's not about how much weight you have on the bar. Like, we're not worried about how much weight you have on the bar. You're trying to be fast and explosive, right? And a lot of kids just conceptually, especially the younger ones, can't, like, struggle to, I don't know if it's an ego thing or if it's just like what they're used to is lifting heavier or trying to lift heavier. So for whatever reason, that a lot of kids just couldn't conceptualize like what 50% is
Yeah.
and why we're using that light of weight, you know?
Do athletes, especially high school athletes, complain about, man, this is too light?
Yeah,
Or-
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
For sure, yeah. We hear that a lot, and I always tell them it's like, well, move it faster. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, I don't care how light it is. Like, if it's too light, like, you can move it faster. Like, we didn't do any this year, but or at least this semester. But in the past, we've done we've done either like trap bar jumps or like triple extension. I call it like a triple extension, a trap bar triple extension shrug where you just finish tall, right? And
Okay.
similar to like your the first half of an Olympic lift, right?
Yeah.
And there's always kids that are like, oh well, this when we do our trap bar jumps, like you can't have any more than 65 pounds on the bar, right? So like keep it a little bit lighter and try to jump higher. Trap bar shrugs, I would always limit it to, depending on the week, like, maybe 225 for the first couple weeks or whatever it is. And kids are always, oh, this is too light. I'm like, well, shit, jump higher or,
Yeah.
or move it faster, or like on the trap bar shrug, like try to jump off the ground if you can,
Yeah.
like, so it's an interesting concept that it's not the kid's fault, obviously, but it's just a different way of doing things. Like, I feel like we're so used to just trying to lift heavy weight and trying to get strong, which again, there's value to that. But I think especially with athletes, there's value to working the other end of the spectrum where you're using lighter weight and moving it as fast as you can. Because I think it's rare. I think it's rare to see an athlete that naturally moves weight fast and explosively without being told to do that.
Yeah.
Even on like sub-maximal weights, even on warm-up sets, right? Like if you're squatting 135 and if you can squat over 300 pounds or whatever it is, like just kind of going through the motions and like not really, there's not much intent behind the movement. So we kind of tried to address that a little bit. I need to do a better job of that in the future, even more, addressing the intent behind the movement. But I think working those like 10 squat, 10 bench, the faster movements, I think played a big part in just getting some good results. Another thing that I forgot that we added in this year, and this seems crazy that we didn't do this before, but this whole year, like we did a whole bunch of pull-ups. And I have not programmed pull-ups for classes before this year. And reason being is because we have such a wide variety of athletes, right? Like we have a lot of kids that have never done a pull-up in their life, and whether they're heavier or whether they're just not super strong, whatever it is, like it for me, and this might have been just laziness as a coach from my part, but I would just, okay, we got this, we got 45 kids in a class and we got freshman through senior, offensive linemen through cross country runners. It's like, all right, like I'm not going to worry about you do this and you do this, especially with our short time. So I would just do like a vertical pull. So like a lat pull down, maybe some type of banded pull down. But just something that was like, for me as a coach, was easier just to be like, oh yeah, we're getting this vertical pull in and like it's the same. It's really not, obviously.
Yeah.
I think the pull-ups helped us a lot, especially on our bench press. Just in terms of, I always tell the kids the stronger your back is, the stronger your front or your chest is.
Yep.
So we did a lot of pull-ups, and we saw a lot of good like kids that couldn't do a pull-up at the beginning of the semester are now knocking out 4 or 5, 6 pull-ups.
That's fun.
So it is cool. Pull-ups is one of those exercises that is, that's a fun one to get down, and that's a hard one for, if a kid has never done a pull-up before, it's a hard one for them to kind of work up to that point and actually start knocking out pull-ups. So we did that. I'm trying to think of how I progressed that, because I would go, I think we started with just negatives, like eccentrics. Pull-up negatives. So we did pull-up negatives for 4 weeks, I think. 4 weeks. And then we would worked into a 3-stop pull-up. So 3-second pause all the way at the top, 3-second pause halfway down. And then, sorry, 3-second pause at the top, 3-second pause like a third of the way down, and 3-second pause like 2/3 of the way down. Because I didn't want to pause on all the way,
Yeah.
fully extended. So yeah, we would do that 3-second pause at each one. Started with 3 reps, and then after that, we would go. Oh, I did a pull-up full hang, so like fully straighten your arms and all the way up at the top. But halfway through, after a couple weeks, I changed it to pull-ups with like 2-second pause at the top and a 2-second pause at the bottom.
Okay.
And only doing like 3 to 5. With those, usually I give them a range because we have such, there's kids that can
Variety.
knock out 10 or 15. There's kids that can do 2 or 3. So worked into that with the pauses, and then I went back to the pull-up with a full hang. And then the past couple weeks, we would do pull-ups. I think the last 3 or 4 weeks of the program. For kids that could do like 10 strict pull-ups, we would do like weighted pull-ups, like just 4 reps. And some kids got pretty heavy on those too. The ones that you would expect, like tread, below, like those kids got pretty heavy. But I think the pull-ups definitely helped with just our upper body strength. So that's just kind of like an overview of the things that we added in or changed.
Perfect.
That I think had an effect for it.
And like even going with the pull-up progression, can we like just outline some of the days? Maybe not volume necessarily at the moment, but in like how those exercises progressed.
Yeah, for sure. So like when I set up these days, like we always do a full body lift, at least in class. In class is always a full body lift. So like Tuesday is our bench press day. So Tuesday we would bench, superset that with our cossack squats like we discussed, and then we would do an RDL, a skater squat, so like a single leg squat variation, and a seated cable row. Now the way that I like put these together, like at the beginning of each semester, I basically have, I know we have, so Mondays are always our sprint, plyo, change of direction day. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we lift. And then Friday is either like a mobility day, or like Coach Tip will do like tip talks or like leadership talks. That's only in the spring. So that's kind of how the week is split up. But when I go through and program before each semester, I have a list of exercises or movements that I know I want to hit. And it's not even a specific exercise, at least when I start. It's like, let me see. Yeah, I got it right up here. So like on Tuesdays, so we'll do our horizontal press, our bench press for our main movement. We'll do a hinge, a single leg variation, and a horizontal pull.
Okay.
So it's like I like to just have just the outline of what we're doing each day and not even give it the exercise yet, at least at first. Like I was always taught when I was in grad school, it's like exercise selection is one of the last things that you do when you're programming. So it's like there's a lot of different movements that you can do for a horizontal pull or a vertical press. And so for me, like I think as strength coaches, it's important not to be tied to any movement at all. So I'll go through and set up the outline of what those days look like. So like Wednesday is like our clean day. And then I just have like dynamic effort / plyo. So like here on this one, I just wrote out like different things that we could do. Like calf work, banded push-ups, seated verticals, seated broads, trap bar jumps, pin bench, pin squat, things like that. Thursday was our squat day. Want something for our distal hamstring, an overhead press or a vertical press, and then our vertical pull, which I knew would be our pull-up. So I kind of set it up like that on our days, and then from there I can just kind of like plug and play the movements that I think would fit in the best. And also just keeping into account like what we did in the fall and what we're going to do in the spring. So like if between the fall and the spring, like the lifts are always different. It's never the same. Again, the format is the same, but it's like if we did, I think in the fall, for example, like for our vertical press, in the fall we did like tall kneeling variations. I think we started with a tall kneeling barbell press with a pause, and then working the tall kneeling without a pause, and then worked into standing, staggered, push press, things like that. But like in the spring, we did a whole bunch of like landmine stuff. So it's
Okay.
like, okay, it's a little different, similar stimulus,
Yeah.
but definitely different for those kids that are in class throughout the full year. It's like, yeah, I don't want them, you know, keeping them engaged obviously is
Yeah.
a big part of the program.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I break it up. So like I said, on Tuesday, we benched, we hinged, single leg variation, so our skater squat, and then our seated cable rows. In the fall, we did for our single leg, one of our single leg variations, we did like a pistol squat variation. So like single leg squat off the bench. A lot of kids worked up to where they were doing it off the floor with a little bit of weight. But some kids did the whole semester where they were still on the bench, and just got a little bit better. Maybe they were using their hands for the first couple weeks, did it without hands, and got to the point where instead of just tapping the heel, they could sit all the way down on the bench,
Yep.
straighten out the leg, like more of a true pistol squat. So again, a lot of the movements, the type of movements are the same. It's just how can we keep these kids engaged and, work a different movement that hits a similar stimulus.
Yes. Yes.
Wednesday was our clean day. This is something else I forgot to mention that we added in this year. We started doing sissy squats. That was our like superset with our main movement. So like
Okay.
between your clean, got 2 sets of 10 sissy squats. That was new this year. I think my first year for sure, I think I was focused a little bit too much on like lower body posterior work. So like
Okay.
a lot of glutes, a lot of hamstrings. And my thought process was like, most athletes are naturally, I would argue, naturally quad dominant, right? So I was like, oh, it's important to, we got to balance that out. We got to, hit the posterior, the hamstrings, the glutes, all that stuff. But I think I was a little too focused my first year on the posterior stuff and didn't do enough like quad work
Okay.
to balance that out. So the past couple years, I've been trying to add in more quad stuff.
Yeah.
And the sissy squats is one of those things that I was playing around with before I added it in, just to kind of see like how we could progress it, what it would look like. Because again, we got a wide variety of kids.
Yeah.
So we added those in as some quad work. And I think it worked out pretty well. It was a good challenge for the kids. It was something completely new for them,
Yep.
which is, I think, always a good thing. So we did add those in, and we would, some kids that struggled with them, we would do it, you lean up against the rack and have like, I had some kids do it, stack 2 reds on top of it, and you're tapping your knee on that. So you don't have to go as low. After a couple weeks of that, maybe take away a red, try to go to the floor. But then I had some kids that were freaking standing on top of a red plate with a chain on, like tapping their, full body weight, like true knee over toe style, like tapping the knee on the ground and coming back up. So we had such a wide variety of athletes. I think that's something that is kind of overlooked strength and conditioning wise, and especially when you're working in a high school, right? You have some kids that are 14 years old and have the only weight room experience they have is what we did in the summer for 2 months, you know? And then you have other kids that are like, have been committed to go to Division I school since their freshman year of high school. So like wide variety of athletes. And it's like, how are you going to structure things that both of those athletes, the kid that's only been training for 2 months, and the kid that's been training for 6 years, that's, playing whatever sport it is at the next level, how are you going to program to challenge both of those kids? So that's something I think that comes with experience, but it's like you have to be ready to have multiple different 2 or 3 or 4 different variations of the movement ready to go, so you can challenge all the kids that you have. So other than that, on Wednesday, we started with our accessories were seated verts, band and plyo push-up, and a kettlebell swing. And then we kind of, we can go over like how we progressed certain movements. And then Thursday, we started with, I always start them with a front squat, even if it's only a couple weeks. The spring The fall, we front squat a little bit more, maybe 5 or 6 weeks. The spring, I think it's like 3 or 4. But started with the front squat. We also, it's something I should have mentioned, we also start, at the beginning of each semester, we'll do at least 3 or 4 weeks of like tempo or pause work. And then we'll kind of take that away. But after our front squats, we did like a distal ham, so a slider hamstring curl, tall kneeling landmine press, and then our pull-up negatives, and just kind of worked through there. So that's kind of like, at least for the lifting days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that's kind of like where we started at.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
All right, so for that Tuesday,
Yeah.
how did we progress exercises in general? You don't have to get into 3 sets of 8 and then 3 sets of 10.
Yeah.
But like, does volume progress up to a certain point and then it's intensity? Is it always volume? And then each, I don't know, block, you start back down and work up, then start back down?
Yeah.
Like so exercise and just in general, volume and intensity?
Yeah, so it really kind of depends on the movement,
Yes.
of course. But like after the first, looking at it here, after the first 4 weeks, like just using Tuesday as an example.
Yeah.
On our bench, we took away the tempo. Our Cossack squat progressed to, instead of 15 seconds on each side, so just an iso, we progressed to you do 6 reps on each side, but you're still holding it on each side for 3 seconds. So now we're adding in a little bit of reps.
Yeah.
But we found if I don't give them at least a second pause on each end, they're just back and forth.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
rapid fire. It's like we're really trying to feel the stretch. So we need at least a second pause on each side. So we progressed that Cossack by straight up just an iso hold on each side to adding reps, but you still have a little bit of an iso. Back behind that, for our RDL, we did do like a banded RDL for the first, I think, 8 weeks. So like just band around the rack, around the hips, walk out so there's tension. You can feel them pulling your hips back. With that, we went from banded RDL, 3 sets of 8, to same thing, no tempo, but 3 sets of 12.
Okay.
So our 3 sets of 8 had a 3-second eccentric. For our 3 sets of 12, there was no tempo. It was just volume just kind of increased a little bit.
Yep.
Skater squats, all we did was add a rep. So we went from 3x4 to 3x5 each leg. And I always try to encourage them to, after a couple weeks, to try the next variation of the movement. So there's a lot of different ways that you can progress that skater squat. But like what we would do is we would start on the skater squat. The most kind of regressed version was, standing on the floor. Really, the most regressed version is using like a TRX or a hand assisted.
Yeah.
But after that, standing on the floor, and wherever you tap your knee, maybe put a 45-pound plate. So you don't have to go all the way down to the ground. You tap the knee and come back up. Once that becomes easy, maybe go a 25-pound plate, or take the plate away, try to tap the floor. Also, a way that we like progress is just holding the 10-pound plate, right? So like helping them counterbalance over the working foot, reaching the 10-pound plate out in front of them goes a long way. And just, I always think of what leads to a good squat at the end of the day is being able to stay balanced over that working foot, right? So holding a 10-pound plate out in front for counterbalance is where we start. But once that becomes easy, maybe do it without a 10-pound plate and just reach your hands out in front of you. So like, depending on where they were at with the skater squat, we kind of, I kind of let them choose where they were going to go with it, and just made sure that they were truly like actually challenging themselves on it. And then our seated cable row, we went from 3x15 to 3x12.
Okay.
So just, go a little bit heavier, decrease your volume a little bit, and went from there. And then for the bench, we went 3x8. Let me see, we had a tempo with that, 4-second eccentric for the first 4 weeks. And then after that, we went to 4x6 with no tempo or no pause or anything.
Okay.
So pretty basic progressions.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
That's what a lot of it is.
Yeah, it really is pretty basic. Now with the Wednesday, looking at it, we started first 3 weeks, it looks like. First 2 or 3 weeks, we did a clean complex. So RDL high pull, RDL full clean. And then after, it looks like 3 weeks, we went to just straight full hang clean.
Okay.
And then that looks like that stayed the same for the next, after 3 weeks, our 4th week was a full hang clean, so no complex. and then it looks like we stayed with that for the next 4 weeks, it looks like. 5x5 on the full hang clean. But for a lot of those kids, like, especially at the beginning, like, it's like, I just focus on technique more so than the weight. Like, I'm really not too concerned about the weight. Now, if it's a kid that's been doing it, last year and this year, and is still has a 10 on each side, like, all right, we need to do something. Yeah, you know what I mean? But
do you prescribe or do you care about high hang versus low hang? Like, where are you telling them to stop, or does that progress as well?
yeah, I usually, for the past couple of years, I've done just like a high hang, so right above the knee.
Okay.
Now, some kids, it really depends on the kid, and I need to do a better job of this. Some kids like to go below the knee. They get a little bit more, momentum going. But trying to explain to them, like, hey, anytime you have to clear the knee when you're hang cleaning or doing any type of clean, it changes the whole movement, right? So it really depends on the kid. I would say 90% of the kids, we were straight high hang, so right above the knee and back through. To me, it's like the more range of motion the bar has to go, the more there are, things that can go wrong.
Yeah, it gets more complex and more variables.
100%. So just try to keep it as simple as possible, especially if someone's never hang cleaned or only hang cleaned this year in here, Now, in terms of progressing the accessories, so we went from seated verts for the first 4 weeks to seated broads, pretty straight up. So we just went from a vertical to a horizontal jump. First 4 weeks we did a banded plyo push-up. After that, we I don't know if I would call this a progression. I don't think it's a true progression, but we progressed that to like a med ball supine bench throw, similar stimulus, just kind of a different feel to it. And then our kettlebell swings, this is not a progression, but we got rid of the kettlebell swings, and we went to our banded pogos. So really those kettlebell swings you could kind of argue the kettlebell swings progressed into your seated broad jumps, if you wanted. I mean, not a true progression, but and then our seated vert kind of progressed into our band assisted pogos, still a vertical jump.
I see it.
And same thing with the bench, right?
Yeah.
The plyo push-ups went to the med ball throw.
Yeah.
And then looking at our Thursday for our front squat, first 4 weeks, we were paused at the bottom, 3-second pause at the bottom. We also passed, I think this is my second or third year of doing it. When we squat, I have them, at least for the first like 6 to 8 weeks, I really encourage them to squat barefoot. I think that's just having to feel the floor, I think goes a long way in having a good squat. But also we'll add a band like right above the ankles. And my thought process behind it is like, I'm trying to bring more awareness to what their feet are doing. So it's like, if you're squatting in shoes and if you never think about what your feet are doing, it's like, yeah, your feet are probably not going to be very stable or active or engaged. It's just kind of, you're not really thinking about it, most athletes. But if you take their shoes off, a lot of times you'll see them, they'll roll into the inside edge of the foot or the big toe side of the foot. So that band is going to actively pull them into the inside edge of their foot so that they have to consciously put more effort into putting more weight into the pinky side of the foot. And so after explaining that to the kids, and using it for a couple weeks, it actually, for most of them, it kind of gets through to them. Just tell them the feet are the foundation of your squat, right? So if your foundation is off from the beginning, then everything else upstream is going to be off. So we were paused, we were banded above the ankle.
And then do you still, because I've heard horror stories from some of the athletes, and I've seen the videos, obviously. Do you still start with zombie squat, or are you, at this point in the year, straight in the front squat?
Yeah, in the spring, we go straight into the front squat. Every fall, we'll do at least a couple weeks of a zombie squat or a hands-free front squat.
Yeah.
But usually, I mean, honestly, I feel like I have more and more each year kids that don't mind the front squat or the zombie squat variation. It's not like it's their favorite, but once they kind of feel it and get used to it, I think that they learn to appreciate it for what it is, and just helping them. I think a lot of kids get into a lower comfortable bottom position with an anterior load. So either any type of front squat variation, I haven't done these with kids, but even a Zercher squat.
Yep.
Feel like you can get into a more comfortable bottom position. So yeah, in the spring, we just went straight front squat, no zombie squats. But in the fall, we always hit at least 2
Okay.
or 3 weeks of that. So front squat went from
Tempo to no.
yep, no tempo or no pause at the bottom. And then I really let them choose if they want to keep using the band, and if they're comfortable with squatting barefoot. Obviously, that's awesome. If you're not comfortable with that, that's totally fine. Like, you do your thing. You know what I mean? But the band, it looks like we kept the band on for 6 weeks, and then from there it was kind of optional. That's how we progressed that. The TRX row went from, we did 2x20 at first 4 weeks. So it's like, yeah, walk your feet back, just do a variation that you can get 20 reps in,
Yep.
but higher reps on that. And then we progressed that to 2x18. So walk your feet out a little bit, still doing higher reps. To me, it's like, yeah, we're only doing 2 sets, and it's like, yeah, especially with something like a TRX row that's not super taxing. It's like, yeah, we'll throw a little volume at them and see how they react.
Yeah. Yeah. They enjoyed that from the few athletes I've
Yeah.
heard from. Not actually.
Yeah,
They're
no, I
like,
know they
"Man,
didn't."
Man, we had to do Coach Rob made us do 20 reps.
It's like,
Yeah.
bro, it's like, toughen up, guys.
Yeah.
You know. So let's see. Slider hamstring curl went from 3x8 with a 3-second eccentric to no tempo 3x10, and we had a lot of kids use. We introduced like weighted sliders. So instead of using a slider, just grab a bumper plate.
Okay.
And with the bumper plates, they slide really well on the turf. So this was, I think last semester, I kind of played around with it with a few athletes to see how that would work. Because it's always like a question of how do we progress certain things, right?
Yeah,
With the
yeah.
slider hamstring curl, it's like, do we add a band? Nah, that's not really realistic for a big group.
Yep.
So figuring out how to use, okay, like if we could start using bumper plates as sliders, and just force them to work a little bit more, that actually worked out really well. So that's how we progressed that. The tall kneeling landmine press for the first 4 weeks was single arm to start.
Okay.
So we did single arm, 6 each arm, and then once it hit 4 or the 5th week, we did both arms together, and I had them use like a hip drive. So like kind of
Sitting
squatting,
back.
sitting back, and then using the hips to bump it back up. That's how we progressed that. And then our pull-ups already hit. We did our negatives for the first 4 weeks, and then we went into 3-stop pull-up for 3 or 4 weeks, it looks like. So that's kind of, at least with those movements between the first and the second block, if you will, that's kind of how we progressed them.
Okay.
So
And then, so each block is about what, 4 weeks?
yeah, it usually works out to be about 4.
And then 16 weeks in a semester?
Yeah.
Okay. And again, you don't have to go super, because you've been very detailed, which is, I think, helpful. But like, without being super detailed, how did that progress and then into the results? 'Cause
Yeah.
the results, I think, are pretty crazy.
Yeah. So it's just like looking at how this is like the outline of the whole semester that I kind of put together before I actually start plugging in exercises. But like, so first 4 weeks is really focuses like time under tension, right?
Yep.
So just tempos, pauses, stuff like that. Week 5 through 8, so the next 4 weeks I have set up as like strength plus volume, so kind of like a midway point where we take away the tempo so you can use a little bit more weight, but we also, with that, we add a couple more reps too, with taking away the tempo. So like the second block is kind of like a strength plus volume, so 9, 10, 11, 12. The next 4 weeks I viewed as kind of like a max strength block, if you will. So starting to work off percentages from our estimated maxes, working up to like, maybe it's 3 sets, 1 set of 6, 1 set of 4, 1 set of 2, super simple.
Yep.
We hit spring break, so always have to keep that in mind in the spring. And then the lat 13, 14, 15, 16. So yeah, 13 through 16, we kind of do like a max strength repeat where instead of doing like 6, 4, 2, we might do like a 5, 3, 1, or we might do like a 6, 4, 2, 2, add a heavier set. This year I actually played around a little bit with doing like a traditional 6-4-2. Some of the days I did like a 2-4-6. So
Okay.
like started heavier. And that, I mean, I think it worked out all right. The only thing about that is, especially being limited by time, is like it takes so long to warm up to a heavy two. So it's like, I think there's some benefit to doing our heavier weights first. But again, it's like if you're limited by time, it kind of throws a wrench in things.
Yeah. No, makes sense.
So that's kind of how we did just the overall
Yeah.
a broad view of kind of how it progressed.
No, that's perfect. That makes sense.
And then working into, so like, let me scroll down here and see kind of where I was. Again, when I was in grad school, the guys I learned under was like, okay, when you're going through in programming, and I don't do this every time, but when you're going through in programming, you should start at the end of your program.
Reverse engineer.
Yeah,
Where do
exactly.
you want to finish? Okay, work back from there.
Literally, it's exactly what it is. So it's like, okay, know what movement you want to end with, right? What's the most progressed or advanced version of those movements? Start with that and then regress it from there.
Yeah.
So like just looking real quick at what our last week of the actual program looked like. So like with our bench press, here's a good example of it. We did one set of one set of two, and 2 sets of 4 if they have time. Most kids only got 1 set of 4 because again, you work up to that heavy one. Our Casa squat, we ended up doing 8 reps on each side with a 1-second pause, and everybody was holding at least a little bit of a weight.
Yeah.
I tell them the weight it's not like loading a traditional exercise, right? The weight, at least with a Cossack squat, helps you get a little bit lower into the stretch, right? So it's just emphasizes the mobility aspect a little bit more. Our RDLs, we went through tempo RDL, normal RDL. We did, I think, a kickstand RDL, and then we worked into the last 3 or 4 weeks. Our RDLs was just back to a normal RDL, 3 sets of 8, and just heavy. Okay. So it's like go super heavy. And honestly, next year I'll probably change that a little bit. I'll probably have them. I think that was the lowest amount of volume I had them hit on RDLs, which is still a decent amount, especially if you're going heavy. 3 sets of 8. So I'll probably even bump that down to like 5 or 6 next year, just to let them get a little bit heavier. Skater squat, again, depended on where they were at, but we had a lot of kids that were, like I said, standing on top of a plate or 2 plates, had like a 20-pound vest on, or had some chains on or whatever it was. So worked into that depending on what challenged them the most. And then our seated cable rows ended up 3 sets of 8, like super heavy. So I would be down here like monitoring who's using what weight. You know, people, a lot of these kids, as you understand, don't know how strong they are. So they're over there knocking out 8 reps with, like 120 on it. It's like, bro, like I'll have to go up there and just throw 160. Won't even let them see what it is. Just tell them to do it, and they can do it. So that's something that as we finished this semester, we tried to kind of just circle all the way back and just go, okay, just go as heavy as you can, or go as heavy as you're comfortable with. On the Wednesdays, the full hang clean. So went from just the 5x5 or the complex, and then the 5x5. We ended with 5 sets of 1 set of 4, 2 sets of 3, 2 sets of 2. Just kind of challenging them as you do that for 15 or 16 weeks. You get pretty comfortable with the movement. Your technique starts to look really good. So it's like, okay, we need to encourage them to add a little bit of weight to it. So just slowly working down to heavy sets of 2 on that. And then our sissy squats, again, that was one that just kind of depended on where you were at in the variation, you know. Ended, I think, for the last 8 weeks, honestly. We did these pin squats and the pin bench, just because I think I had it originally scheduled for 4 weeks, but it took them a couple weeks to get used to the concept of what we were trying to do. And I liked how they looked, and I liked just the stimulus that it was giving us. We didn't really have anything else that gave us that same stimulus of being fast and explosive and aggressive with a moderate amount of weight, you know. So we kept that around longer than I originally planned, which was okay. It just, like I said, I think it worked out well for us. And then our band assisted, we finished with those as a vertical focus, where longer time on the ground, more knee bend. Like I said, in the future, I'll probably end with go back to the pogos. Or maybe even I think I've seen you do this before. I haven't even played around with any scissor variations or like staggered. That might be something we do in the future to make it just a little bit more single leg focused. And then for our squat day, Back squat, the same thing as bench. So 1 set of 1, 1 set of 2, 2 sets of 4. TRX row is now at 2 sets of 12. Most of them had their feet on the bench. Most of them had a plate on their hips as well.
Love it.
And then slider hamstring curls worked into single leg slider hamstring curls, and most of them were using. We had a kid this is one of the kids that he's a track kid. He works his butt off. But last year he was one of the first kids that I had play around with like bumper plates for sliders. And he was doing sets of 6 on a single leg slider hamstring curl with a 45-pound plate. Jeez. Yeah, which is that's no joke. It's hard enough if you never tried a single leg slider hamstring curl with a normal slider. That's hard enough.
Man, we got like the sore necks like rollers.
Yeah,
they got wheels on them, and we put them on hard ground, not even on turf. And especially most people, from what I've seen, can do it. And now I'm like, no, your hips gotta be higher.
Yeah.
And so I'm constantly hips higher, and it's like it's like seriously, seriously. So I can only to do it with a plate, and like the videos I've seen, and maybe this is just what I've not paying enough attention. I see with the 10, and like you talk about how it slides. So I'm like, it's pretty much like a slider.
Yeah.
But then even thinking of doing it with a 45, and I looked earlier at like these plates, it's like they have a lip. It's not like it's completely flat, smooth surface.
Yeah.
And to do it with a 45 on a single leg would be tough.
It's definitely tough. I can't
impressive.
do it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But really, at least talking to the kids that I kind of tested it with, it's really like the eccentric is about the same, a little bit harder, but obviously the concentric portion of the movement where you have to fight against that weight, and especially as like the last, 30% of the rep, as you're trying to get your heel as close to your butt as you can, it's like that's when you really start to feel the weight like fight against you.
Yeah.
So you feel a little bit better of a squeeze up top with some weight there.
Yeah.
So that's slider hamstring curl. Landmine press worked into a standing landmine press with a hip drive. So I think we went tall kneeling single arm, we went tall kneeling with a hip drive, we went standing, no legs, and then we finished with this, standing landmine press with legs or finishing through with your hips. And I told them on that, a lot of kids would try to go into a full squat and come back up. And at least my thought is like, I just explained it as we don't need to go, I don't want you to go into a full squat. I want you to, should be similar to like a vertical jump, right? And that's something that a lot of kids sometimes struggle to comprehend, but like when you vertical jump, hopefully you're not squatting all the way down and jumping back up. Like you need to utilize that stretch shortening cycle. Kids don't know what that is, so I don't even use that word with them. But like I tell them, like think of like when someone does a vertical jump, like you load your hips and you jump as high as you can. Same thing with a hang clean. Like that turnaround at the bottom, I always emphasize that should be fast and explosive, right? You don't want to pause down at the bottom, lose all your momentum. It's the same thing with like a standing landmine press. It's using your hips. It's like you don't want to go slow and all the way into a full squat. You want to load the hips and punch it back up.
Almost like a push press.
Yeah, very similar to a push press. And then our pull-ups just ended with, like I said, some kids were doing weighted pull-ups. That was, again, for kids that could do 10 strict full pull-ups. So full hang, chin above the bar.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, you don't need to do weighted pull-ups. Or at least I didn't have them do weighted pull-ups. So just gave them I had it set at 4, but I gave them a little bit of a range, went to 4 to 6. Some kids, we only have 2 of like the actual weight belts that you weave it through. So we had most kids like just use a band, feed it through the plate and kind of wear it as a backpack. Some kids would use like a weighted vest. We got 5 or 6 like 20-pound weighted vests. Some kids would use chains. So it just kind of depended where they were at. But that's kind of what we ended on those 3 days. And that's not even, we obviously haven't even talked about our sprint, jump, and plyo day. I don't even have that written down, how we progressed it. But usually I just progress it week by week. The first couple weeks we'll do a lot of like lower level plyos. I like to have them do that back here on the turf with no shoes. So we'll do like a rudiment series that just works the lower leg, foot, ankle, calf. We'll always do some type of like vertical plyo, and then we try to get in, we'll we'll split the group up. Half the group will do some type of change of direction. The other half will do either like an acceleration-based speed exercise or like a top-end speed. Most of the stuff, obviously, we do is acceleration-based, but we would work a little bit more into top-end speed stuff as we got closer towards the end of the semester. So that's just a very quick overview of kind of at least where we would start. And then as we got closer towards the end of the semester, like pretty much for the last 2 or 3 weeks before we started our testing, we had, we basically just did our test. So we would do like a 5-10-5. We might add like a partner or something, you know, something to keep it a little interesting or, but then we would go out and we would run like full 40s, you know, because that's something that I haven't done a good job of in the past, where it's like, yeah, we don't have 40 yards really anywhere in the building that we can run through. So it's like, yeah, we're sprinting 10, 15 yards. Yeah. And then when you get them out to run a 40, if they haven't ran that length ever or in months, it's like, as you know, it's completely different feel. So getting them how to...
That gets me terrified.
Yeah.
Terrified.
Getting them to understand how to me, it's hard enough to get them to understand the difference between acceleration and top end speed and what that looks like and feels like. But then it's a whole nother challenge to, you know, to transition from your acceleration into your top end speed. So even if you can conceptually, okay, I know these are the differences in positioning and what we're focused on between the two different phases. It's like, okay, now how do I transition from a 10, 15 yards of acceleration into your top end speed?
Yeah.
So kind of worked on that a little bit. That's something that, again, I could probably do a better job of just kind of communicating that and getting them to understand and feel that. But that's, again, a quick just overview of what the Monday, like, speed, strength,
speed and
agility, and like plyo stuff. Looked at.
Okay, so clearly like a very well thought out program based off of like, especially the lifting days. I'll focus there, like what kind of the main movement is of the day, what accessories kind of getting paired with that. The accessory movements later on, how you progressed, not only the exercise, the time under tension, initially the volume, then the intensity. It's like clearly a well thought out program. Now you still are, you know, limited with time. I think you said before, but how long is the actual, not the class period, but the lift, change in, change out? How much time are they actually lifting?
It's like max, it's 30 minutes.
30 minutes to lift. You're still doing with big groups. You're still doing with high schoolers who are hanging out with their friends. There's 2 coaches in here, so people are probably, you know, someone's going to screw around eventually. Unless you are Coach Cotton and then like shut that down. But you still have the normal variables of working in a high school setting with that age group and with the time restrictions. So all that being said, what can you talk about the improvements? I mean, I've seen some just videos on Instagram of people squatting God knows how much. I've heard from people that we both train, like how much they've improved, or like as a group.
So I have it pulled up here, and at the end of each year, I go through and basically just like crunch all the numbers. And so basically what I'll do is I'll set up, most of the kids had a previous score for all the tests. Now, if they started in the spring, obviously they're not going to have a baseline test because we test it in December at the end of the first semester. When we come in the spring, it's basically straight into the program. So if you start in the spring, okay, you don't have a previous number. So obviously those kids are not included in these percent changes, but most of them will have a previous score that we can kind of base it off of. So I'll do our previous score, which is from December, and then our current or end of year score, which is in May. I'll put previous, new, and then just put a formula in there to look at the percent change between all of those scores. And then from there, I'll average it out and see kind of what the average change was. So some of these numbers, when you look at the average percent change, some of them are like, for our vertical, like our average percent change was 4%. 4% increase. So like looking at it, it's like, yeah, that's all right. Like that's nothing crazy. But like looking at it, we had out of, I wonder if I can do this real quick. See if this will let me. Oh, it's not gonna let me. Let's see. So that starts at 137. So out of 132 kids, we had, let's see, out of 132 kids, it looks like 96. Looks like about 40 of them either did not increase or decreased a little bit.
Okay.
So that would be, so 90 kids got better out of that. 40 kids did not,
Yeah.
which is, some of them are like, looking at them, some of them are like just kids that don't really do shit.
Don't show up. Don't come dressed. Don't care.
Don't care. Have no care in the world. Some of them are like kids that actually work hard. They might be in season. Like some of these, like we have a decent amount of boys volleyball athletes that either stayed the same or barely improved.
Mm-hmm.
We have some track and field kids that stayed the same or barely improved.
It's tough.
In season it is tough, but then there's also kids in here that aren't in season that decreased or didn't improve. And it's like, I always try to tell the kids, it's like, your testing period is really where the rubber hits the road, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's easy enough to be in here with these big ass classes and 2 coaches in here. It's easy enough to make it look like you're staying busy and doing what you're doing, but like the numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
Like
when you actually?
Yeah. When you look at it, it's like, okay, like what is actually, what work have you actually been putting in?
Yeah.
Right. So 4% change on the vert, which honestly I was pretty happy with, especially looking at the improvements.
And we're talking an inch and a half.
Yeah.
Depending on where they started at. It's like, for not working a ton on vert, having what sounds like Monday and Wednesday where you're doing some jumping, it's like, geez, like
we had some good improvements on the kids that worked hard and actually committed to what we were doing. Like if a kid improves half an inch, like that's progress to me. Like,
and going through 16 weeks of being in puberty and lifting, you're probably gaining weight as well.
100%.
So, yeah.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's our vert, just a quick run through. Now our 40, same thing here. We had a 2% increase on average out of, let's see, this goes 5 to 133. So 128 kids. Average percent change was 2%. Our biggest change was a 13% improvement. Our biggest decrease was we had one that was 16%.
Decrease in the sense got worse.
Yes.
Not decrease time.
Yes, that got worse. And that he's kind of like, he's an outlier. Anywhere past that, the next worst decrease was 6% from there. So that 16 is a little bit of an outlier. And if you knew that, he's a great kid, but if you knew the kid, you would kind of understand. So that is our 40, and again, out of, let's see where we're at. So this puts us at 98 to 1. Matter of fact, I'm not even going to count those. Because this looks like, so 0%, some of the 0% are too low to, so like some of them did improve, but if we look at the 0%, so stayed the same or got worse. So 104 to 133. So 29 kids either stayed the same or got worse. So that is between a decrease of 1 to 6%, or 16 if you count.
Yeah, the outlier.
The outlier.
Okay. And that's with one running day.
Yeah.
Only probably the last couple weeks were you running outside.
Yeah.
If that, couple weeks, if even a couple weeks. In northern Indiana, you can't run outside. And like you said, the space here, not a lot of room for top end speed.
Yeah.
So lifting and doing acceleration.
Yeah.
And we saw those type of improvements.
Yeah, with the 40s, I was pretty happy with them for the most part. I was pretty happy with most of the results that we had. Something that I meant to tell you earlier, where's he at? Big Owen Dotson. Because I talked to him about this as well. I'm like, bro, so Owen Dotson put on 25, 30 pounds.
I think he went from 170, it might be high ones, let's call it 180 to now 210. So yeah, 30 pounds.
around there. Now, to be fair with these 40 times, when we go in December, we only run a 10. Because again, it's cold outside, there's snow on the ground. We're not going to go out and run 40s, and we don't have any 40 yards. So this is from August to May.
Oh, that makes sense.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So August to May. So really the full year. And again, there were a decent amount of kids that did not have a pre-test because they weren't in class. But this is the only test that we can't hit in December just because we don't have the space. But going back to Owen put on 30-ish pounds between August and now May. And he ran in August, where did he go? Bro, I just had him. Oh, here he is. Okay. August, he ran a 5.14 at 180, 185 pounds. In May, so last week, he ran a 4.9.
Yeah.
And that's with, 25, 30 pounds on top of him. And, I told him that. I pulled him aside. I'm like, hey, man, he's a hard worker. He busts his ass. And when a kid works like that all year, we have a good amount of kids that do that. I try my best, especially when they see really good results like this. I try my best to pull them aside and be like, hey, you understand, like this is where it's paying off. You know what I mean? Like, don't let this go unnoticed that this is really impressive. For you to run a quarter of a second faster with 30 extra pounds on you is really good. And you look at that, that's a 5% increase.
Yeah.
And that's a quarter of a second faster. So our fastest increase, like I said, was we had a 13%, 12%, 11%, couple 10s, couple 9s, good amount of 7s and 6s.
Jeez.
And I told Owen, I was like, yeah, that's really good, man. Like, you should be proud of that. You should be happy with that. And he was like, hey, man, it's that work I've been doing with Steve, man.
He said that?
Yeah, he was like, Steve's really been, breaking it down for me. And, especially the first 10 yards, understanding how the start needs to be. And he, you can tell just watching him run, at least for the 40, he sprints a lot better. So he recognizes it, but he also recognizes that a lot of the work that you do with him is definitely paying off.
Hard worker.
He definitely is.
Okay. Broad jump.
Yep.
Squat bench.
Pro agility.
Oh, yeah.
So pro agility, we got, 2% increase on average on our pro agility, and that's out of 130, so out of 125 kids. And it looks like maybe, 5'7", 4'5'3", where's this at? 98. So about 32 kids either stayed the same or did not improve. So that would mean about just under 100, so 98 kids maybe.
I feel like that's been the case for all three of these categories.
Yeah.
Okay.
It seems pretty consistent with that.
Yeah, right about that.
And honestly, most of the kids that don't improve or don't increase are the same kids.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to point out.
Yeah. Not always. Not
yeah,
always.
Of course. You might struggle with something, or we've gained weight or had an injury here or whatever.
Yeah, 100%.
So 2%. If I don't know if this is easy on there. Can you just click on someone with a 2% improvement, considering that's the group average?
Yeah.
And what's that time from pre to post?
Yeah,
what's that actually look like?
This is probably, because we have a good amount of 2%. This is about right in the middle.
Okay.
It looks like most of these people that are 2% is a tenth of a second. So 4.67 to 4.57, 4.52 to 4.43, 4.87 to 4.76.
Yeah.
5.1 to 4.1. So it's about a tenth of a second.
And again, wait, 5.1 to 4.1.
4.51 to 4.41. Yeah.
Jesus.
No, yeah.
Again, that's 1 day a week.
Yeah.
Working on. Every Monday you did change of direction or not? Okay,
Pretty much,
okay.
Yeah. But even then, it's you're going to get, when we split the group up, each group, if one group's doing change direction, one doing top end speed, it's 10 to 12 minutes of that.
10 to 12 minutes. Plus there's a holiday, plus there's testing, plus there's a 2-hour delay, plus there's a school cancellation.
Yeah.
It's not like they're getting all these days.
Yeah.
10 to 12 minutes a week. And I'm assuming not only doing the 5-10-5, but doing some sort of change of direction. You're limited by space. But you're not just doing that drill over and over again for 16 weeks.
Yeah, 100%.
There's different change of direction variations.
Yeah.
And to still see that improvement.
Yeah, pretty good.
And this is all of the sprinting, change of direction stuff is laser.
Yeah.
It's not like I want Jimmy to get better.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
no, this is what it was.
Yeah, the lasers don't lie, man.
Yeah.
Some kids don't like them, but
No, they're humbling.
that's all right.
Very humbling.
Yeah, that's all right. So that's the pro agility. Broad jump, we had a 4% average increase here. And that's a good idea to look at like what the four.
Yeah. I mean, 4%, I know not everyone's jumping 100.
Yeah.
But that's going from 100 to 104, which kind of makes it easier. But
Yeah. So if you look at like the top 4%, so that improved the most out of the 4% was 101 to 105 and a half, 68 and a half to 71 and a half, 92 to 96, 69 to 72. So about 3 inches for most of these people, 3 to 4 inches.
3 to 4, yeah.
And I mean, for us, again, to kind of go back to the broad jump, like we rarely ever, to be honest, most of our jumping is vertical focused.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't do, I mean, we hinge every week and, do that type of movement, but we probably don't horizontally jump as much as we need to, but I'm okay with it, you know, because again, we're just limited by the time that we have and how often we do things.
Yeah. And you're still getting some, I would argue, you're for sure getting some horizontal work in with just sprints,
Yeah, 100%.
acceleration.
Yeah.
And really, it sounded like the only horizontal jump, and maybe I'm blanking, was a seated broad jump.
Yeah.
And it's like, literally, just get stronger.
Yeah.
Get stronger, get more powerful, and it's going to be fun to see these squat and bench numbers.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of it, especially at this demographic.
100%.
Just get the muscle to contract better.
Yeah,
get
and learn
stronger.
Yeah, learn how to move your body better. You know what I mean? Or activate certain muscles in certain movements.
It's not anything. And again, like some of your progressions through the movement, like well thought out, good progressions, Cossack squat, like time under tension stuff, the pull up stuff. But it's like just progress, just get stronger, and you'll see the magic happen.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be anything fancy.
Yeah, and you're hitting so many different things in about 90 total minutes of lifting throughout the week.
Yeah.
Of different movements, different intensities of, all right, we're going to hit a 5x5 of clean, which is we're going to work up something heavy.
Yeah.
Then we're going to do 20 reps of inverted row. Then we're going to have a different day where we're doing basically speed squat, speed bench. Mm-hmm. It's like you're hitting a lot of qualities in there as well.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I try to do in my programs, especially with high schoolers, is like, there's a wide variety of, I just try to think of like, okay, I'm trying to move most of the joints in all the directions that they can go.
Yeah. Right?
So like vertical push and pull, horizontal push and pull, hinge, single leg, and then your full body or your main movements. That's kind of like when I outline the program, it's like, okay, I know I need to hit these distal hamstrings, another one. I know I need to hit these movements, and then I just kind of plug and play from there, you know? And it's, with high schoolers, again, I think it's important just to give them variety and help them feel different positions under load or without load or whatever it is. I think that just goes a long way in just, like you said, helping them learn how to move their body and just become stronger, more acquainted to the movements that we do in here. I think that stuff goes a long way. So looking at the bench, we had a 12% increase on our bench, which was pretty good. We had out of 135 people, we had, 114. So we had 21 kids.
Everyone wants to get better at bench.
Yeah. We had 21 kids either stay the same, and we only had 1, 2, 3, 4. We had 4 kids decrease.
Okay.
And those are about 5 5-pound, 2 5-pounds decreases, and 2 10-pound decreases. And those kids, for the 3 out of the 4 is like, it's not surprising.
I was like, it's either going to be that or it's like a baseball player who maybe took it a little bit easier upper body lifting.
The other one was a volleyball player, a boys volleyball player.
So in season.
Yeah, that's in season. So that, I mean, and I haven't really looked at that in this sense. Like, man, having 20 kids, having 16 kids stay the same kind of sucks. There's no reason. I really yeah, you should, if you have 16 weeks and if you're lifting properly, you should not stay. You should be
Yes.
able to get heavier.
Yes.
And only having, 4 kids, obviously ideally you'd have no kids decrease. But with that, looking at it, pretty solid numbers, man. We've got, I mean, our biggest increase was a 42%, which is from 95 pounds to 135 pounds. Now he's a freshman. So again, he's more grown now than he was
Yeah.
at the beginning of the year. And a lot of that is just being consistent in training and just growing into your body.
Yeah. Jeez.
We had a couple, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We had 6 kids be between either 30 to 37 percent increase. And again, a lot of those, not all of them, but a lot of them are younger kids, freshmen, sophomores that are just, just growing up, just
Yeah.
growing into their body. And then, a decent amount of kids obviously in between there, but 12%, if we look at that, we got a couple 12%. So one of them, 165 to 185, so 20 pounds. We have 3 of those, 165 to 185. Then we have an 85 to 95 pound.
Jeez.
So that's between, again, depending on where your baseline was at, between 10 and 20 pounds average increase.
And you said off camera last week, how many guys are benching 300?
Let me check here. We got 1, 2. One, two, 3, 4, and I think there's one more in here. 5. Yeah, we have 5 kids at least 300. And we have a couple kids over. I think we have 3 out of the 5 are 315 or between 315 and 325.
Dang.
Which is pretty good for the kids that we have.
Yeah.
We have a few big kids, but most, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Only 2 out of those 5 kids. We have 1 offensive lineman, 1 defensive lineman, and the others are either like secondary. We have 1 secondary, 1 linebacker, and 1, I guess the one's kind of like a linebacker D-line type of kind of in between.
Yeah.
But that's pretty good. It's been a while since we've had anybody hit over 300 pounds. But to
Really?
Yeah.
Dang.
To have 5 of them though is pretty good. And again, I think the pull-ups and the like the pin bench and that type of stuff, I think played a big part in that. And then lastly, for our squat, we had a 15% increase on average on our squat. Looking at this, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We had 6 kids decrease, and we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We had 7 kids stay the same, and everybody else increased. So that's out of what? So what? 7 plus 6, 13. We had 128. We had about 123. So we had, out of 123 kids, 13 kids either stayed the same or decreased, and everybody else improved.
Jeez.
We have, now again, to be fair on this one, we do have an outlier. We had a kid that broke his leg last year, at the beginning of last year. And obviously he got cleared last year and everything. And he's a hard worker, but he increased this. I shouldn't have even included this because this isn't fair. But he squatted in December. He squatted 245, and in May he squatted 425. Now that's not the program. That's just him. I don't know if he was hurt in December or what it was, but he could have squatted way more than 245. I would think in December than he did. But past that, we have a 52%, 115 to 175.
It's huge.
49, 40. Nah, that's not right either. It's right, but it's an outlier.
Okay.
You actually know that kid. But other than that, it looks like we have a couple outliers that kind of bump that average percent up. But other than that,
you're still talking 130 athletes, so it's not going to skew it that much.
Yeah, for sure. looking at like what 15%. Looking at 15%. Some of the kids that increased 15%. Had a handful of them: 260 to 300, 230 to 265, 405 to 465, and 240 to 275, or 15%. So
Yeah.
kind of hard to average that out because it depends obviously where
Yeah.
you start. But
30 to 50 pounds.
that is our those are our 6 tests that we went through
Yeah.
and improved. And honestly, like looking at it, man, like I'm pretty happy with them
You should be.
for the most part. I
That's-
mean,
yeah.
there's things obviously that that we can do better and improve upon, but I think that's just one of the important things of being a strength coach or an athletic performance coach, of just always trying to change things or trying to do things better, even with like, okay, getting some decent results. It's like, yeah, there's things that we're going to adjust next semester and over the summer, just kind of change things up and see, a lot of it's just trial and error at the end of the day.
Yep.
So that's kind of the overview of the program.
That was more than an overview.
Yeah, kind of how we progress things, what each day looks like, and kind of the end results of that.
Yeah.
So
Any new high school strength coach, college strength coach could listen to this and like have a program.
yeah, 100%.
Make little tweaks based off time or something, but like, boom, you have a program now.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, like we've mentioned multiple times throughout this, it's nothing crazy. It's nothing
No.
fancy. There's no secret.
No.
There's nothing. This is not anything new at all. Like people have been doing this shit for decades, and it's just a matter of it's like a puzzle. It's just a matter of figuring out. And each school is different. I think that's important, especially at the high school level. Like each school is different. Each set of kids is different. So like I was thinking when I worked at Garrett for a year before I came here, like completely different demographic of kids. Like those kids were blue collar, used to hard work, and had 90% of them had no problem. Like I just tell them what to do, and they're like all about it.
Yeah.
Whereas here it's completely different demographic of kids. We have a little bit more just better natural athletes, I would say, here than at Garrett. But I think the natural work ethic on average at a school like Snyder compared to Garrett is a lot lower. So it's like, yeah, how do we get across to these kids that this is the deal? Like this is where you make most of your progress. And we've been blessed, like I said at the beginning of the this talk, like we've been blessed to have a lot of, especially seniors this year, a lot of really good, committed, like fully bought in athletes.
Yeah.
And I think it helps. I know it helps, especially for younger athletes, to look at older athletes that are in the position that these kids say they want to be in and see what they do on a day-to-day basis.
Yep.
So it's not like, hey, these kids are not playing at the next level, for any reason. They didn't just fall into this. Like this has happened for a reason, and this has taken 4, 5, 6 years to get to.
Yeah.
So it's not like, yeah, you're a good athlete and you've been used to, just being naturally better or faster or stronger or bigger than all the other kids. It's like, yeah, like when you get to high school, like the playing field's pretty much leveled out, right? Like everybody hits puberty, you grow into your body, and the kids that excel 9 times out of 10 are the kids that, completely buy in and show up every day and figure out a way to get their work in regardless of how they feel.
Yeah.
And that's pretty rare. But we've been very blessed with a handful, I can think of 5 or 6 athletes as seniors this year that do just that have showed up day in and day out, buy into everything that we're doing, and just put the work in.
Yeah.
Is really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
So anything else you think?
No, I think that was great. That's
Solid?
huge. Yes.
Good overview. We'll continue to be consistent with this and working on some other stuff too. I know we said that every week, but we're making progress on that. And we got to break down your program too sometime.
We can do that.
Yeah, we got to break that down sometime in the next couple weeks. So other than that, we're freaking out of here. It's Sunday. 3 days left of school. So yeah, summer's coming up, and good talk, huh?
Yeah.
All right, man.
All right. Oh, my ass is sore. Damn, my ass is asleep. It's crazy.